Welcome to NewtoMedia, where we connect you to the best service professionals and help you learn about great experiences all over the world.
Hey everybody, Zack at NewtoMedia again. Just wanted to bring in another professional that can help the audience to learn about estate planning today. I'm happy to have Jim Miskell, who is an estate planning attorney here in Georgia, with us today. Jim, how are you?
Great, Zack. I appreciate you having me today. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. I know that because we are working with business owners, oftentimes, we're working with home service professionals or realtors and a number of people that are working in a number of different industries that help people who are moving. But this time we're bringing in a professional that is one of those people that you oftentimes are going to need to connect with if you're moving into Georgia, especially. But anytime a professional or a family is moving, they need to update their legal documents. Jim, why don't you, first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you into law?
That's a great question. So I was an engineer and was looking at what I was doing. It was more management than engineering, the technical side of it. And I sort of dropped back and said, well, I'm not really getting the opportunities that I'm hoping for here. But I ran a radio station, I was a general manager for a radio station.
Really?
I managed, maintenance crews, and sort of went, well, you know what? I'm okay with people. And I like solving problems. And that's how I fell upon law school. There's not a lawyer in my family. We weren't close with any lawyers. And so it was sort of an out of the blue solution that really worked out. I went Georgia law, and I've been a lawyer for it would be 32 years this year. And
wow.
I think it stuck. It was a career path that I couldn't have predicted. And when I went to law school, I thought I'd be a general practitioner, maybe a small town, sort of do whatever folks needed. I ended up being a prosecutor for 12 and a half years. I started, every day in the courtroom. And that was a great way to start my career. I left prosecution in 2005. Left the DA's, open a general practice. And in the DA's office, I had done a lot of work that got me involved with families in crisis. I worked a lot of domestic violence in state court. I did crimes against children for about 5.5 years. And, everything to murders and sexual assault cases and those sorts of things. But very often I was working with families that were in crisis. And so as a general practitioner, I sort of did what you expect a former prosecutor to do. I did criminal defense. I did divorce law because I was comfortable in the courtroom. I call it, they call it family law. I call it anti-family law. And
well, that's got to be the hardest part. I think that would be the hardest part of law to deal with.
It was. But so that leads me to estate planning, is that as a general practitioner, I had some folks come to my office. I'd been open about 6 months with my own office, and folks came in and they had wills that were 16 years old. There weren't anything, they didn't expire. Wills don't expire. They had just fallen out of sync with what was going on with that family. And, they had wills that started out where their kids needed guardians and people to care for them. And now their kids had gotten through college and into the workforce, and they wanted to make their kids their agents, their power of attorney agents, their executors, that sort of thing. And so, that was the first, I remember that first one, and I started as a trickle and then a stream. And it occurred to me, and I think this sort of appealed to the engineering part of my brain. It occurred to me that my estate planning clients were being proactive rather than reactive. Everybody else I was working with, we were working with a problem that had already occurred, and we could work the margins and make it somewhat better, but really couldn't solve the problem. My estate planning clients were trying to do something ahead of time so the family didn't have that problem. And I thought, that's the thing for me. So it was 2008 when I decided to go all in with estate planning.
Right.
And it took about 3 or 4 years to 2011, 2012 until I was 100% estate planning. And along the way, it was a lot of, you and I have spoken a little bit about different trainings we've had and continuing educations. And that's really what I went back to school with continuing legal educations, membership in national groups, listservs, those sorts of things. Because I didn't want to do forum practice. I really want to be able to counsel effectively. And I've never looked back. It's the greatest thing I've ever done for my professional practice. And I say it all the time. The only reason anybody's sitting across the desk for me is that they love their family. And what a great way to spend your day is meeting with folks who are just trying to make their families' lives better. So that's sort of, you asked a short question. I'm a lawyer. I went off.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're not charging by the minute here. That's no problem. With the estate planning work that you're doing, and you're working with families and you're working with businesses, we're going to touch on a few of these issues, but I think it's great for people to first of all know that estate planning is not just for wealthy people. I think a lot of times people, when they hear about estate planning, they think it's trusts with, millions and millions of dollars in it and this and that. But estate planning is so much more than that. You want to touch on that for a moment?
Sure. I think it's easy to think just what you said. I think a lot of folks think estate planning, I think you got to have a mansion to need it. And the truth is, our estate is everything we've got. It could be the spare change on the dresser at the end of the day. And estate planning really falls into two phases. And the first phase is the one that comes to mind for most folks is who gets your stuff when you die.
Yeah.
What do wills do? Those sorts of things. How's the property distributed? And I think the part that folks probably like to think about even less than themselves dying is, what if I become disabled? What happens between today and the day I pass?
Right.
Most people I talk to, they're going to be alert and the lights are on and they know what's going on. And one morning when they're 120, they just won't wake up in the morning. And the truth of it is that most of us are going to have some level of disability where we need some help. And estate planning, whether you're rich or poor, allows you to designate people you trust to fill those functions. And it's really a way to extend independence. Older folks who are worried about losing their independence sometimes hesitant to do it. And I try and tell them, getting the people you trust in there positioned ahead of time, that's a way to keep your independence and to stay. So it's all about making sure that the decisions get made as you age are yours and not somebody else's. And of course, distribution of property and assets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember hearing people that are estate planning focused say a number of times that it's not just about the money, it's about the control and you being able to control who those assets go to. And it's not just necessarily that it goes to your family, but does it, for instance, if you own a business, you're going to want to make sure that the certain members of the family are controlling certain things. Some people are better suited to manage this part of the business, and some people are better suited to manage the other part of the business. And there's so many different parts of it that you can help them to ensure go the way they would want, so that not only does it stay in the family, but it thrives after the rest of the younger family members take over.
I think that's a great point. One of the things I really love about estate planning is you can separate that idea of benefit from control and decision making. Because just as you point out, you may have some family members, a daughter that's worked in the business with you, and you may have sons or daughters that did not. You may want them all to benefit equally, but you sure don't want folks with no experience trying to make the decisions over there.
Exactly.
So,
oftentimes they have different strengths. Some are, and they may all be fantastic contributors, but they probably have different strengths. And unfortunately, sometimes there are family members that are not contributing or even taking away. I mean,
It can happen.
yeah, the term that I heard used that I thought, and I don't really use this term often, but it's a great one, is there, occasionally there's a spendthrift in the family. There's someone who does not manage money very well.
That's right. Spend it faster than they get it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess we've all had times in our life when we were not perfect with money. So I'm not casting any stones, but tell me, how do you deal with those situations?
So you can think about the gifts that you give at death as being an outright gift, or maybe some conditions need to be put on it. Mm-hmm. Almost without fail, my clients when they think about giving gifts at death, they're not thinking about wanting that person to have a big party or one fast car. They want their life to be improved somewhat over time.
Right.
And so there's more than just one question to ask. The first most obvious question is who gets it?
Right.
The second level of questioning is, well, when and how should they get it? And if they're that spendthrift, water assets flow through their fingers like water, maybe they need some backup there. They need maybe a co-trustee, somebody that can say, well, is that really a good idea?
Yeah.
And the nice thing also about, and I think what appeals to me again about estate planning, is that there really is a design process. And when you think about that testamentory trust plan, and that's what I'm talking about, is that the rules for the gifts you give after you die.
Just for the audience, testamentary means what?
It means I'm dead.
Yeah.
Last will and testament. Testamentary means somebody's died. Means I've died. And so that's the structure of the gifts you would put in a testamentary trust. That's the name for the rule book for that trust, is a testamentary trust. And you can it's like a thermostat. You may have somebody who has great judgment, but maybe they're in a risky occupation. Maybe they need some asset protection from others, but you want them to have complete discretion and control over. You set the thermostat over there. Mm-hmm. You can move the slider to the other end for somebody, like you mentioned, who's a spendthrift or has terrible judgment. You still want them to have the benefit, and you're trying to protect them from their own decisions. That one's a little bit more paternalistic. It's got a little bit more restriction and rules. It really depends on what your objectives are and the personalities and dynamics of the family.
Yeah, I know I've seen a number of situations, or heard of a number of situations where you want to give that benefit in stages. You don't give them that money all at once.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a few examples of how that can be done?
Sure. So sort of the traditional, which you'll see most often, is a 3-stage process. And very often it's at 20, the ages that it's set for those beneficiaries would be at 25, 30, and 35. But you can move that around. I'm seeing all different combinations. It could be 32, 35, 37. It could be anything you want it to be. But generally, the old standby for the tried and true estate planners of the decades, of the past decades, would be to divide the gift into thirds. You sort of hope that the first third that gets distributed is a test balloon that's very successul, that they figure out how to manage the money and do well. But you only give them a third. So that way it's a little like training wheels. The rest of it is still growing, still protected in the trust. And hopefully they learn some lessons that aren't too costly. And so you might see it set up to say, we're going to distribute a third when they reach the age of 25. When they reach 30, we're going to distribute half of what's left. That would represent the second third. And when they hit 35, you're going to distribute the remaining balance, which would represent that third and final third.
Exactly. And I'm not going to get into investments or anything like that. But as a planner, hopefully, that gives the team that is managing the assets some time to continue growing.
That's right.
If we can, if financial planners or financial advisors have time to manage the assets, there's a pretty good chance that by the time you get to that second or even third tranche, that it's a larger chunk of money, and that we can
compounded growth, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I will tell you, there's an alternative to that. An alternative way to look at that is, and I've structured a lot of plans like this, where you'll say at 25, okay, until you're 25, we're going to let Uncle Mark be your trustee.
Mm-hmm.
At 25, how about we'll make you co-trustee? You get to start coming to the investment meetings. You get to start understanding how it works. And when you hit 30, hopefully you've had that training wheels period with Uncle Mark there.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to fire Uncle Mark, you can. If you want to go on as sole trustee, you can. Or you can hire yourself another co-trustee if Mark at this point is sort of aging out, and maybe you put a sibling in. So that's one way that the third plan works well from the standpoint of getting that beneficiary kind of up to speed. But it forces a third out at 25, out of the protection of the trust, out of the supervision of the investment counselors. It's out. And whereas a discretionary, if Uncle Mark thinks it's a good idea, he can cut you a check for it. You don't force out more than you might need. Also, it may be the golden business opportunity of a lifetime, and really you need half of it, not just a third of it. With that first rigid, that plan, the third can be a little bit rigid. So there are different ways to slice this depending on the priorities of the family.
Right. Well, that's interesting, and that's a new idea on the transition of the trustee role. That's interesting. Well, let me ask you, with estate planning tools, I want to talk for a few minutes about some of the solutions that business owners should have in place to protect the various stakeholders, to protect obviously their heirs, but also to protect the other employees or their partners, and even to protect the employees, which I know oftentimes is a really big concern for the business owners.
Oh yeah.
There are tools that like a buy-sell agreement that are an example of something that businesses often use. You want to tell us what that is? And
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing for business owners to begin to think about kind of early on. So let's say Zack and Jim, we go into a business together, and we know how the business runs, but we see that life may not go on the way we see it forever. We may become disabled, or one of us may predecease the other. We just build an agreement that says, all right, we're going to buy some insurance. And if one of us dies, that insurance will pay the business. And that way, Zack, you can buy the Miskell family out of the business, because my wife, Jane, is lovely, but she's never worked in the business with you. So you probably don't want to be partners with her automatically just because she inherits my shares. Right. And so the buy-sell agreement sort of lays out expectations for everybody ahead of time. If one of us dies, what happens? And I think it's great. It's important that the agreement be appropriate, but it's maybe even more important that the agreement is there and expectations are set. It can be fantastic or it can be kind of mediocre, but you're so far ahead just having that agreement. Right. So that families understand what to expect. And then a second piece of that is sizing the insurance payment. Does it pay to the deceased owner's family, or does it pay to the business? Should it also include not just buying out the interests of the deceased partner's family, but also some operating expenses? Some salary replacement, because hopefully I'm important to the business, and when I go, you're going to need somebody to do what I've been doing.
Exactly.
And so that's also, I've seen, and I do, there are business consultants that really can get granular on this. And I defer to folks to make robust business planning
Sure.
that really know the ins and outs. But that's really part of it, is not just buying out the shares, but also making sure that the business is healthy and robust and doesn't die just because I do.
Right. Or you become disabled.
That's right. So you're right. So not just, and I sort of talked about just dying, but you're right.
Mm-hmm.
If I become disabled and can't fill that role, that's where disability insurance can come in to fill the very same functions. That's
Absolutely.
right. Yeah.
And how often, if a business owner did one of these, say 10 years ago, and they haven't updated it, that they should look into that too, right?
Oh yeah, I think so. Probably 3 to 5 years. Not to say that, of course, the insurance company always be willing to sell you more insurance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think it is very important to make sure that what you've got is sufficient. The ideal, of course, is that the business has grown to the extent that what you thought was an appropriate size policy 5 years ago is just not going to get the job done at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to update that, or that the check that they send is not going to change.
That's right.
But even if you did it 10 years ago and it's not worth as much as it should be, it's still better than not having anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Another solution that we hear about a lot is key man insurance. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that?
I feel like I sort of stepped over the line into key man insurance a little bit.
Okay.
Same sort of function is that if you've got a key employee owner or key employee, that if they become disabled because they've died or they're got some other incapacity, how's the business gonna deal with that?
Right.
You got costs of, is it gonna cause lost business? Is it gonna cause, you need some maybe salary replacement, candidate search? You need time to get all those things together. And that the design or the idea behind key man insurance is that the business, although it's a crisis, has some resources to deal with that crisis.
Exactly. And it might not just be the partners that own the business. It might be a COO or a GM that's doing a lot of the daily functions, and the business would be hurt if they're gone. So it can be for other people in the business as well. Well, fantastic. Let me ask about something a little bit different, and still staying with the business succession planning. Oftentimes, if a business owner is getting to a point in their career where they're thinking about either selling the business or giving away the business to family members or whatever, there are a number of different scenarios that could happen. It could be that they will give the business to the kids while they're alive. It could be that they are going to give the business to their children when they pass. It could be that they're going to sell the business to the kids in one of those situations. It can be that they are going to transition the assets in the business over to the employees through something like an ESOP, and then I guess, I don't know what the most common scenario is. I would assume staying in the family, but the other is, of course, selling the business to a third party. How do you, when you're having discussions with clients about those different types of scenarios, how do you help them to prepare for those things ahead of time?
Sure. And clients fall into some categories. When it first comes up, some clients are like, hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And, then we're really starting from a conversation that sounds very much just like what you were just reviewing is, well, all right, there are several options here. And it may be prudent to begin thinking about this. Some clients are dreaming about selling that business the day they start it and they're all ready to go. You know, they have already thought and have some ideas. I'd say most are sort of somewhere in the middle. Well, I'd like to have my kids to have it. And that's sort of relates back to what I'd said a little bit earlier about the difference between benefit and decision making.
Right.
Some folks, if they want the kids to have it, a lot of times they've got one or two of them working in the business, but maybe not all of them. And, you know, you may have a child that's very successful, that's an MD, but doesn't know anything about real estate. So really should not be making decisions over here.
Right.
But may share profit. So my planning process sort of across the board is, let's for a moment get away from the mechanisms, if I can, with the clients. You know, how, you know, what neat gizmo does the thing, is an ESOP or whatever. You know, I read this great article, and so let's drop back and just say, in your mind's eye, what would you like the future to be? How do you want to see the things? Is your dream, if you look 20 years in the future after you left the business, that your employees are all still there and they're running it and co-owning the business? Let's start there, and we'll back into whatever planning mechanism it is. But that's really, and that's what I do with the family estate succession as well, is let's talk about how you want it to be, which for a lot of times business owners, entrepreneurs who are creative, they already are fixed on an idea of a way to do it. Sometimes it's just backing them off that to sort of talk about it. But one thing I'd really like to encourage is, if they're at the beginning stages of it, is getting involved, making sure that they've got somebody that really gives them good accountancy services, that they're really working with a CPA firm that's not just thinking about, let's make your taxes lower this year, but really talking about tax planning, you know. Because those strategies, if you're transferring to family members, it makes a difference between whether it's a lifetime gift or a gift at death. Because with capital gains, you get to step up in cash basis, a gift at death. That's not the be all and end all of your exploration, but that's a factor to put in, you know, when you're talking about tax efficiency. And I encourage them, if they've never done it, to get a consultation with a good business consultant that does valuations, that can give them sort of a view of where they are in the market. Because the beautiful thing about this is that the beginning steps, whether the end is to transfer it to the family, or to sell it to a third party, or even to transfer it to employees, building a business that's strong and attractive for a third party to buy also makes it a strong and attractive business to transfer to employees or to transfer to family. A healthy business is a healthy business.
Right.
And that can be a lot of folks don't want to hear that. That's hard sometimes, is like, because sometimes I think business owners are, look, I just want you to figure out how we're going to pass it on. Don't get into my business about how I'm running it. That's not really where I'm coming from, because I don't know how you should run your business. But I think it's important. It's an invitation to dive a little bit deeper in a way that benefits the business as it runs now, and your position. Should you create an ESOP? Well, what's your yield on that? What's your buyout? And if you're passing to family members, it enhances the value of that asset. So it's just beginning that conversation about what a client would like to see.
Jim brings up a really good point, in that when you go through a planning process like this, there's a good chance you're going to get introduced to other professionals that are really going to improve your life. Whether that's a great CPA firm that helps you to get these things organized, that may have tons of benefits, not just for your estate planning. They may help you to improve your financial statements so that you have a better relationship with the bank for the next line of credit or whatever.
That's right.
Working with a business coach or consultant can help you to improve the cash flow from your business incredibly. I've seen amazing work by business consultants to help people improve their business. They're not taking over your business, but we all benefit sometimes from feedback. And I know that I do. I love having a great team around me, and I'm so happy that I've met so many great professionals like Jim. Going through a proper planning process can help you meet a lot of people that can enhance your life. Jim, let me ask you, when you are talking to families about their planning, and this part doesn't just apply to the business succession planning, but just other parts of the estate planning. Sometimes families are going to have an interest in leaving money to causes that they care about. So, sometimes that's going to be a religious institution, a church or a synagogue or elsewhere. Sometimes it's going to be a charity that has impacted their life, or a cause that has impacted their family. I know that many people that do planning or in the financial services industry are familiar with charitable remainder trusts and charitable lead trusts, but maybe not everyone else may not be super familiar. Do you want to speak to just some of the ways that you can help families to also benefit those charitable causes or other institutions?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was it.
All right. Sure. As you say, there are various ways to approach it. If you trust planning, a lot of times it will allow you to take on a strategy. If you're doing a charitable remainder or charitable lead trust, either way, it's a strategy where you set up a legal vehicle that will allow the family to retain some lifetime benefit from some assets that are actually going to go ultimately to that charity. There are a lot of favorable tax treatments that you get from making charitable deductions. And when you're worried about estate tax threshold issues, which is a great problem to have, there's a lot of robust planning out there that we developed when the estate tax threshold was much lower than it is now. Right now, for a couple, $27 million or so, you can transfer it during life and at death without having to worry about estate and gift taxes. But if you're worried about reducing the taxable the tax burden on the family through gifting, charitable gifts can have a really positive effect on you. And they really, my experience is they don't make anybody all of a sudden charitable, but they just kind of reward and give an extra benefit to that charitable giving. I've seen a lot of folks also make very effective use of donor advised funds. And the community foundations, where you can set up a family foundation without having to go through all the red tape of setting your own up. You can set your board up of family members to continue gifting in accordance with your values. And again, there's some tax benefits, but another benefit I see that's pretty seriously is that it's great to give the charities a lump sum, but with trust giving, donor advised funds, or a family foundation, charities, and I just know this working through churches that I've been a member of, it's really appreciated that there is an income stream rather than a single gift. And so I think it can be effective on so many levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the family gets to, over a period of years, stay involved with the cause. I remember this this gentleman that I previously told you was such a great speaker. Cannon Financial Institute many years ago, when I saw Ted Reitelhuber speak, he mentioned the scenario where if you give a lump sum cash gift, you might go back to that church or charity a few years down the road, and they might try to look you up. What was your name again? but if you are, but if you have a trust that is making annual gifts to a charity or an organization, they're much more likely to stay in touch with the family, and the family is much more likely to be engaged with the cause for many years.
That's funny. When your kids show up for homecoming weekend, they know who they are. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. They're gonna might roll out the red carpet even. Yeah, that's right.
Funny.
Well, that's great. It's good to know that people can take care of those causes that they care about, not just the family. And again, you don't have to be a billionaire to have an ability to make an impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we have, I know in my practice, we have clients that give every year, and some of the gifts are larger, some are smaller, but it's something they do consistently, and that's still makes a big difference. Okay, well, the last thing that I have that I'm thinking about from a gifting standpoint is that, or getting assets out of the estate, I should say, is that sometimes I know estate planning professionals like yourself can help those business owners that have been very successful and have accumulated a lot of assets in the business to manage that valuation, because if sometimes if they don't do proper planning, and the business is worth $100 million or some really large amount of money, there may be a really large amount of taxes due, and a professional like Jim and the team they work with can also help that business owner to manage that through various vehicles. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you can help those business owners that are part of a bigger operation that may need to use some of the more complicated techniques?
Well, again, time is of the essence. I think the biggest enemy is putting that sort of thing off. And if you have a good first, ascertain what your succession plan is, what your desires are, put one in place, and as you any lifetime transfers you make gets it outside of the estate for estate tax purposes, and there are various techniques to do that, to transfer to the employees over time, or even to family members. And there's a methodology you can use, a family limited liability company, family LLC, to do that, where family members begin with a given interest in the company, the family company. And over time, you can transfer amounts with reduced tax impact, because we all have annual exclusions of, right now it's up to $18,000. You can give it as many different people as you want to every year, and you don't have to let the IRS know about it.
Yeah.
And
so that means a couple could give $36,000 to any. That's large amounts of gifting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And let's say a son and daughter-in-law are getting ready to buy their first house. The husband and wife can give $36,000 to the son and $36,000 to the daughter-in-law, $72,000 without a tax.
That's a pretty nice down payment. That
would have been great. But and those don't sound like much, $100 million versus 72,000. It doesn't sound like much, but any amount that you can reduce that tax liability, you're talking about roughly a 40% tax liability. So every dollar you can get out, you're saving 40 cents. So, so these the magnitudes may seem a little off, but that's why time is the enemy. Putting it off is the enemy. The sooner you figure out kind of which direction you're doing, the more effective these techniques are over time. It's like anything else. You wait to the last minute, you're going to get a less effective result. Not that you won't get no result. It's never too late.
Right.
But the earlier you start, the better off you are. Yeah.
Like, what was it you said before about the cleanup situation?
Yeah. So we do. That is something I talk about all the time. My firm's called the Estate Planning Law Group of Georgia. And I tell people, we do cleanup. We'll do your probate, your estate administration. Somebody's died unexpectedly. There's no planning. We'll navigate through that, what the state statutes do. Because that's the truth of it, is we may think, folks who think they don't have an estate plan, they really do. It's the Georgia Code. And the Georgia Code has a solution for every problem we can have. It's just that instead of you making the decision, somebody over at the courthouse is going to make the decision, and they're going to try and do a really good job, but they've never met you before.
Right.
So we do the cleanup, but my firm is not the estate cleanup law group of Georgia. It's the estate planning law group of Georgia, very deliberately, because planning is always less expensive emotionally and financially for families.
Yeah. Pay us now or pay us later, but it's going to cost you more if you do it later.
That's right.
And that's not necessarily that it's going to cost more in legal fees, but I would assume that too. But likely it could be more in taxes, could be more in administration fees. You're going to help them to avoid as much of those things as you can if they take care of it early.
Oh yeah, and the cost in relationships, that's when in angry, as awful as some divorce cases can be, a contested probate makes them look like kindergarten. I mean, that's when people say, well, you took my tricycle when I was 4 and I've never liked you and you've always been like this.
Oh yeah, I've heard these. Yeah, you were always Dad's favorite. And
yeah. And I think I just try and urge folks, get that plan in place so your kids can be mad at you after you die instead of mad at each other. My kids' relationship with each other is going to last a lot longer than the relationship with me.
Yeah.
So I got to look after that.
That's true. That's a good point. Well, that's great stuff. And I know that as a planner, this is one of those parts of the process that we have to make sure that we get help with. We can help folks to do a number of different types of planning, but we cannot get near the legal aspects or the tax. We can have maybe a little bit of knowledge about it, just enough to be dangerous, but we have to always bring in people like Jim and bring in those CPAs to collaborate with us, because that's when you're doing real planning. Tell us, Jim, if someone is wanting to start getting information about going through the process with, I know you can't get into too much detail on pricing or things like that. At what stage do you think an individual or a couple needs to start doing planning?
Many folks come in and say, we need to update our wills because they've gotten old. We did them I can generally guess, I'm like a carnival on the midway. I can guess the age of your will if you'll tell me the age of your oldest child.
Okay.
Right? They have the folks get married, they have their first child, and all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, there's somebody else who depends on us, and they'll do that basic will. So I think as soon as you realize that somebody else is dependent on you, that's a trigger for a lot of folks, any of these life events. This may be shocking to you, but we encourage folks to start estate planning at the age of 18. Okay. And the reason being is that as parents of kids, you get to go back in the dentist office and say, do the fluoride or don't do the fluoride. You get to talk with the doctors and all those things. And when that child turns 18, although we know parenting is not over, right. At 18, that legal authority to participate goes away. And when folks turn 18 and they enter the workforce, or they might go off to college, if they get injured and end up in the health center at the university or at the emergency room, they probably still want you to be the person to show up and help make decisions. So that's where the first level of estate planning, healthcare directives and powers of attorney are really important. And I know that sounds so exciting for an 18-year-old. Hey, on your birthday, we're going to drop by the lawyer's office and you get to sign powers of attorney and healthcare directives. But that harkens back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, that there's really the two phases of estate planning. And one is who gets my stuff when I die. But really more important right now is making sure if I need help, that I've appointed the people to help me that I've chosen. Because the Georgia Code, there's a method to do that. If your son or daughter ends up in the health center and they're in a coma, induced coma because they've been in a bad wreck, you don't have the authority to discharge them and admit them somewhere else. A superior court will eventually give you that authority to do it.
Right.
But who wants to wait in line at the courthouse and go find a lawyer to do that when you can sign a document in a few minutes and have it all set up?
Absolutely.
But I think generally, as folks get a little bit older, what the needs are and the robustness of that plan changes. And I see a lot of folks go from a sort of a simple will to a living trust plan kind of as their kids start to get a little bit older, as they become a little bit more advanced in their own careers, as that sort of accumulation phase ramps up. That's when I see folks do it. I say a lot of folks do it later. Folks that do trust planning in their 30s, have a vehicle that they can just do tune-ups on throughout their lives. And it continues.
It's a good point to bring up too, is the times when people should be updating the planning. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, again, life events, anything changes with health, people in the family, new children or new adoptions, somebody passes away, a change in income. You're going from employed to retired. You just want to check and make sure everything's the way it is. You mentioned earlier on folks moving into the state. I think whether you're moving into Georgia or to another state, it's best practice, check in with an estate planner there. Over the years that I've been doing state planning as a focus, I've seen the formalities in the various states become more unified. It used to be one state needed 3 witnesses, one only needed 1, those sorts of things. That's becoming more and more unified. Georgia has a more robust self-proving requirement for wills than most other states. So a lot of folks, when I take a look at their will, it's valid coming into the state, but it won't be self-proving. That just means there's a couple extra steps in probate. Healthcare directives in particular, I think it's good to have one that's familiar to the doctors and nurses, where you're likely to end up in the emergency room if you have to go. Right. So I think it's good, although it may be effective. Your healthcare director from Montana may be substantively fine. Here at the hospital, at Emory, they're going to look through it to figure out what section to look at. And if you got the Georgia format, they know it. So I think that a check upon a move from one state to another is always that's a good time to review and make sure everything's in a row.
Yeah, because different laws have different rules about community property and some of the other things that are that you're going to speak to that for just a moment to explain that.
Sure. So different states have different ways that they look at and classify marital property. And in Georgia, and they have different ways that they view how that property is divided upon the death or divorce of one of the divorce of the spouses or upon death. And those rules can impact not just inheritance and who the beneficiaries, what they get, but can also impact the way the tax returns look. So it's good just to make sure that you're on solid footing there, particularly if they're larger assets. For most folks, it doesn't make a real significant difference on the tax side unless the assets are large. But how things divide out upon death or divorce, that can make a really large impact.
Exactly. Fantastic. I wanted to also give the audience an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the ways that you and your team are accessible, or some of the different events that you have. Jim, I know that you occasionally have clinics and those types of things where you teach people about these concepts. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd like that. So the best way to get in touch with me, if you have questions or want to see more material from me, is my website, which is letstalkestateplanning.com. Letstalkestateplanning.com. Legion, my website. I've got more than a decade worth of blog posting on various topics of estate planning issues. I've been fortunate to be a guest on a podcast or two, and we'll have a link to this on the website. You can access that. I do estate planning workshops, live in-person workshops, at least one a month. I do community events for senior communities. Did a Q&A last month. I did just basics of powers of attorney, just sort of whatever they need. And I do what I call professional presentations. So, Zack, in your business, you may run into some folks, a group of your clients who just need some information about estate planning. And rather than have them come to sort of a free-for-all where the public at large is coming to my workshop, I can come to your office. I'll do a custom presentation to those folks. So I do that for allied professionals, whether they're investment, insurance, accounting, those sorts of things. But education is really the cornerstone of my business, because I've found it makes the planning process more effective. When I've got a client sitting in front of me that sort of has a vocabulary, has already percolated on some of the ideas, it makes those meetings so much more effective. And I would say it probably buys back about 40 minutes from the meeting, where I'm not droning on about the basics. I'm getting to talk about your family and learn what's really important to you, because that's really the great thing about estate planning is it's unique to every family. And the most important conversation you can have with your professionals is what's important to you.
Absolutely. That's very valuable. And like you said, getting to know them and having a little bit of time with these other professionals ahead of time will help jumpstart the process. Well, let me ask you this, Jim. When you're not being a lawyer, what are you doing?
Not much. Not much other than being a dad. I got a 22, a 21, and a 17-year-old. And so we've still got one in high school, and it's her senior year. And so she played some club sports, and she's in her high school season right now. So we're spending a lot of time enjoying her and working the college process with her. So.
Wow. I'm right there with you. My wife and I have we have a blended family, but two 23-year-olds, a 19 and a 17. So we're right there in the same place with you, getting ready to do some college tours in a few months.
Yeah, that's right where we're at. So that pretty much takes I used to have other interests and activities outside of the family. Maybe I will again one day, but I tell you, I don't mind too much. It's I don't mind at all. They're my favorite people to spend time with. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I joke about it. I say I want them out of the house, but I want them close.
Right.
So move out, but stay in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's probably selfish. So I shouldn't even say that. Hopefully they'll go where they want to be, but visit a lot.
Yeah. And hopefully it's right across town.
Absolutely.
I'm with it. I understand.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, Jim, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today. I can't wait to break this into a number of different segments, because you've covered a lot of great information. We'll of course, do our best to get you connected to some of these folks that would benefit from having a conversation. And I hope we'll have you back on again soon.
Zack, thank you for your hospitality. I really appreciate the time we spent today.
Absolutely.
Let's go! Let's go!